There's common chess knowledge. Develop pieces in an opening, control the center, don't challenge Carlsen when he's drunk. I learned the last one the hard way. But if you want to get ahead of the crowd, you need to know something that your opponents don't. And in this video, I'd like to share with you those 5 tips that will help you to outsmart your opponents. And now we got this game between Albin playing white against Bernstein playing black, 2 of the famous players of the past. And initially we've got one of the most common chess openings of all time, the Italian game, and they play very common moves. Now bishop g5, pinning the knight, black goes bishop e6, developing a bishop, also contesting the square d5, which makes it a little harder for white to play knight to d5, which white played anyway, trying to make use of the pin and put additional pressure onto this knight on f6. Black traded this off, bishop recaptured, pawn to h6, challenging the bishop of g5. And here is probably the first interesting moment when I would like to ask you to think about that. How would you play here as white? Now, obviously, white has got to do something about that bishop on g5, which is attacked. In the game, white traded off that bishop on c6. Maybe he was worried that it is kind of under the pressure. He traded off here with a check, black recaptured. Then he saw that this bishop is attacked, and he traded it off just as well. Now, do you think it was smart for white to do that or not? And for the OGs, you know that to take is a mistake. But in general, why is it wrong for white to just trade off these pieces? Think about it in simple terms. The goal of chess is to checkmate your opponent's king. Yes, that's clear. But how do you get this? How do you get it done? You need to have your pieces to be more active, more advanced than your opponent's one. And here white has these 2 active bishops, and white voluntarily eliminates his own advantage. Right? So for instance, okay, if this bishop is attacked, maybe you can trade off this one. But for the other one, it is standing in the center of the board, controlling these 2 nice, juicy diagonals, putting pressure. The knight cannot easily go away because that pawn will be hanging, and therefore it's a great bishop. So what's the point of trading it off? Right? There's no point. Or if white decided to trade off right here, then again, all right, now this bishop is attacked, but you don't have to take. You can just go back and maintain the pin and keep black wondering what to do against it. So again, if you trade, be sure you're paid. Avoid exchanges for no reason. All right, let's continue. In the game, white traded off and then played pawn to c3, getting some space in the center. Now rook to b8, hitting this pawn on b2. And here's an interesting thing. Rook to b8 is actually a move suggested by a computer, and it seems that this is the best move for black to play. However, as a chess coach that analyzes a lot of games of my students, I can tell you that moves like that are extremely dangerous. Why is that the case? Because, everybody knows that you got to develop pieces in an opening, right? But very often what happens is that at some point you've been following this idea and then people drift. Why do they drift? Because they notice an interesting attacking opportunity. And rook b8 is not bad in itself. It develops a rook as well and hits the pawn. But very often, people would even play something like this, hoping for g4, drive away this knight, and then put together this basically scholar's mate with queen takes f2. And when you play moves like that, very often they backfire badly. Because white doesn't even have to do anything special to stop this idea. They can just castle and naturally protect this pawn f2. And now this g5 is just a major weakness. Now your king is having a big trouble. Where can you hide it? All the pawn structure is weakened all around. At some point, while we'll play d4, break open the center, and your king will be in big danger. Now, rook to b8 is not a bad move in general, but I would say that generally speaking, you need to prioritize development over one movers, right? Complete your development first, castle your king, and only then transition into your attack. All right, back to the game. White noticed that their pawn is hanging and push the pawn forward to b4, attacking the bishop. The bishop retreats. What should white do now? Just castle, right? Develop. White played queen to a4. And once again, it's actually the same situation. Computer actually says that this move is great, and you would see that sometimes Grandmaster play moves like that seemingly violate classical opening rules. But I'm going to tell you, still follow those classical rules. Grandmasters know when it's okay to make those exceptional ideas, right? But here at queen c6, the move is not bad in itself, but again, I'd much rather prefer you to just complete your development first before going for one movers. Anyways, white is also doing the same thing, and now the question is, what are you going to do about that? Your pawn is hanging, and it's also pinned down to the king, therefore you cannot just move it away easily. Now, what do? I mean, the easiest solution that a lot of players would play is just to castle and to give up the pawn. not bad, like not the worst case scenario, but of course, in this case, you just give up a pawn. That's also pretty sad, right? White is having a material advantage in that case. And strong players know the rule above that. When they're attacked, they don't automatically settle for defense. They know that offense is the best defense. And it sounds cliche, but nevertheless, it is true. While attacked, we default to defense, but strong players default to counterattack. That's a totally different way of thinking. And here Black played pawn to d5, a very interesting idea. White captured, probably thinking that maybe Black just missed the idea that the pawn is actually pinned. Black cannot recapture. You see that the Black king is not allowed to do that because the pawn is pinned. But instead, Black continued pawn to e4. And the idea is that he wants to utilize that the White king is still centralized and Black is trying to gain initiative right away. And by the way, how would you play here as White? Now, White simply captured this pawn a4, and this is a move that probably the vast majority of players will think, and that is also a losing blunder. Again, another very common situation is that both sides play more or less normal chess at some point, but then there is one major blunder, and after that, basically there is no coming back. So here, pawn takes e4 is a major blunder, but do you see why? It's very, very useful to ask yourself, which forcing reply can my opponent play? And a forcing reply is checks, captures, and threats. And the way I think about it is you got to focus on your half of the board, in this case, White's half of the board, and ask yourself, how can Black come forward onto that half of the board and make some devastation? A check, a threat, a capture, right? And here there is queen takes c3, which goes into the direct attack of the White king. And to make things worse, now this rook on a1 is also hanging. And that basically gets it right under a cliff, right? White is going down severely badly, which could have been prevented pretty easily. Right now, White had a move knight to d4 to shut down this diagonal, and White is doing fine. Yes, it's hard to calculate all the consequences, but at least you can see that White will have time to castle and avoid any immediate danger to his king. And the position would remain not very clear, but perhaps approximately equal. Now, in the game, White played the most obvious move, which again is also a losing blunder. Queen takes c3, but of course it's still not that simple. King to e2, White played this move to connect the rook so that Black cannot easily capture it, because now the rook is protected. Black instead played queen to c4 check, the king comes back to e1, now queen takes e4, another move with a check, king comes to f1, and Black's attack is kind of over. This pawn is still hanging, Black finally castled. Queen takes c6. Now that brought us to another interesting position where White is actually up a pawn right now, but yes, this king on f1 is exposed and Black goes rook to e8, creating a strong attacking threat. By the way, again, how do you find attacking moves? It's basically the reverse idea of what we talked about before. You look at your opponent's half of the board, you ask yourself, how do I go forward and make a forcing move? Check, capture, threat. So here the threat is queen to e2 check, king goes away, and then queen takes f2, checkmate. That's the threat. All right, White played king to g1, which brings us to another, also I think, very simple sounding, but extremely overlooked principle. Let me ask you a question. What is the main problem of White's position? Initially we thought that, okay, there is an exposed king, but it's not really the case anymore. The king on g1 is much like the king on g8. Right? It's a classical position of the king, so that's not really an issue. Also, White is up a pawn at the moment, right? There are no immediate threats. So the real challenge is this rook on h1, which hasn't yet moved. And I understand that the current position is quite specific, but let's get a couple moves back to something very common. Again, there is a very well-known idea that you gotta develop pieces in an opening, but somehow people only assume knights and bishops. But the very same rule applies to your rooks just as well. A rook is more powerful than a knight or a bishop. And in this case, for both sides, their primary goal right now is to activate their rooks. And this is exactly what they should do before they even begin thinking about attack or plan or anything else, right? You gotta utilize all the pieces you have. White failed to follow this idea a couple moves back when it was so easy to do that, and now he's really struggling. The rook on h1 is totally out of game, and it's not even easy to do anything about that, but the other rook on a1 also is out of game. Nevertheless, now Black needs to hurry, because if he plays slow moves, White will find a way to activate those rooks, maybe through h4 and bring the rook right there, and therefore Black played a pretty creative move, rook to e6. Kind of a little bit teasing White. Hey, do you want to capture the rook? Right? Do you see what's wrong with that? What will happen if White captures right here? that would hand the queen, right? The pawn is pinned down to the queen. Quite a creative idea. White played queen to d7, getting the queen out of danger, also trying to keep protecting this one. But then rook to d6. Black is kicking the queen back once again. Queen to a4. And how would he play here? Obviously, black could have taken this pawn on d5, but he had something else in mind. He played queen to e2, threatening queen takes f2, or even bishop takes f2 checkmate. Looks like white can stop that pretty easily by going rook to f1, and this is exactly what white played. But do you see what black can do now? It looks like white surrounded his king with defenders, and yet those very same defenders block the way out. And black sacrificed the queen right here. That was probably a very unexpected and pleasant surprise for white, finishing the game with this beautiful checkmate. Now, if you want to know how these rules work together, the entire system of thinking, I'll link down below my course Level Up Your Chess, where I've answered all the questions that you guys sent me, what to do in an opening when you're out of theory, what to do in the middle game when you don't have any clear plan or there are pawn barriers, you're not sure how to break through, and how to avoid blunders, which is one of the most critical areas to get yourself to the next level. Again, if you're interested, the link is down below. Best of luck with your chess battles, and I'll talk to you soon.